The hidden power. Nietzsche used to read people instantly. What if I told you that one of the most misunderstood philosophers in history had a secret power, one that allowed him to see through people instantly? Not a trick, not a party trick, but a deeply cultivated ability, one that came not from a book or from a guru, but from years of isolation, suffering, observation, and radical self-honesty. Friedrich Nietzsche, yes, the man who declared God is dead and shattered the illusions of morality, had something far more piercing than just intellect. He had insight. He had perception so sharp it cut through the masks people wore. And yes, you can develop this power too. But let me warn you, this isn't about learning to judge people. It's about learning to see them, to see what lies beneath their words, their performances, their curated personalities. To see not just what people say, but what they hide. To understand their fears, their contradictions, their desires often better than they understand them themselves. Nietzsche wasn't reading faces. He was reading souls. And the reason he could do it was because he had first read his own.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
The journey starts with a question so simple it's almost invisible. Why do people do what they do? Not what do they say, not what do they believe, but what actually moves them. Nietzsche called this the will to power. Everything he said is rooted in this, not the desire for happiness, not the pursuit of peace, but the drive to expand, to assert, to survive, to matter. The will to power is not evil, it's not violent, it's simply the engine that drives human behavior. And once you see that, you start to realize that people reveal themselves in everything they do. Every choice is a strategy. Every word is a signal. Every silence is loaded. Nothing is neutral. Think about it for a second. How often do people say one thing and do another? How often do they claim virtue while acting out of fear? How often do they pretend indifference while craving validation? Nietzsche's genius wasn't in calling people hypocrites, it was in understanding the structure of the lie. He saw the mechanics of self-deception. He saw that we don't even lie to others, first we lie to ourselves. And if you want to see others clearly, you have to start by seeing your own lies. Here's the first key to Nietzsche's hidden power: radical introspection. Not self-help introspection, not affirmation. I mean brutal, unflinching truth-seeking. Nietzsche believed that most people avoid truth because it's painful. It shatters their identities. It destabilizes their illusions. And so they build entire personalities around avoiding certain truths. But when you start facing your own truths, the ones you've buried, rejected, denied, you begin to see the same patterns in others. You recognize the tells, the avoidance, the projection, the overcompensation, because you've felt it all yourself. So ask yourself right now, what part of you are you most afraid to look at? Is it your envy, your weakness, your hunger for attention? Is it your fear of being ordinary? Is it the fact that sometimes you pretend to be kind when all you really want is control? These are not confessions. These are revelations. And Nietzsche believed that if you could dive into those places and survive, you'd gain a kind of X-ray vision, not mystical, but psychological. You'd stop being fooled by appearances. You'd stop being manipulated by charm or status or virtue signals. You'd start seeing the structure behind every behavior. The second key is this. Nietzsche didn't just look at people, he looked through time. He studied how our instincts were shaped by evolution, by culture, by religion, by trauma. He wasn't looking at the individual as isolated. He was seeing them as part of a larger system of forces. When someone acted out of fear, he didn't just see a coward, he saw a history, a conditioning, a survival mechanism. So when you're reading people, don't just look at their actions, ask what system created those actions. What pain trained them to be like this? What ideology rewards this behavior? What fear is buried beneath that performance? This is where it gets unsettling, because once you unlock this lens, you'll never look at people the same way again. You'll see the person who's always positive as someone desperately trying to outrun despair. You'll see the highly moral person as someone terrified of their darker impulses. You'll notice how the confident leader is often a deeply anxious child who learned to perform competence because failure was never safe. And you'll see this not with judgment but with clarity. It's not about cynicism. It's about compassion rooted in truth, not fantasy. And here's where Nietzsche's power becomes yours. You begin to read people not by what they say, but by what they need to say. You hear the subtext. You notice the energy behind their words. You see the contradiction between their posture and their eyes. You begin to ask, silently, what are they protecting? What are they hiding from themselves? What would happen if they had nothing left to prove? These questions don't always have answers, but they open a door. And once it's open, you can't unsee what's behind it. Let me leave you with an uncomfortable question to sit with before the next part. When you speak, are you expressing your truth or protecting your image? And if you don't know, how can you expect to read anyone else? The mirror of instinct. How Nietzsche used human nature to predict behavior with surgical precision. Once you start seeing people not as who they claim to be, but as who their instincts have trained them to become, you enter a new dimension of perception. Nietzsche's brilliance wasn't just in exposing philosophical illusions, it was in tracing back every thought, every moral claim, every behavior to its root impulse. He believed that if you want to understand a person, don't ask what they believe. Ask what they need to believe in order to survive. Ask what core instinct is holding up their worldview like scaffolding, because at the bottom of every action is a drive. And at the bottom of every drive is an attempt to preserve, expand, or elevate the self. Nietzsche once said, "There are no moral phenomena at all, only a moral interpretation of phenomena." That one line is a scalpel. It cuts deep into our illusions. When someone lashes out in anger and says it's because they were defending what's right, Nietzsche would ask, was it really righteousness or was it ego? Was it really about justice or about control, dominance, or fear of losing status? The words we use to justify our actions are stories. But underneath those stories is something more primal. Nietzsche read people by peeling away those justifications, one layer at a time, until he reached the core instinct. This is what he meant by looking at people genealogically. He didn't just see the surface. He asked, where did this belief come from? What purpose did it serve? How did it evolve? When a person is obsessed with rules and order, is it because they are moral or because they fear chaos and need control to feel safe? When someone preaches love and harmony, is it because they are selfless or because they've learned that peace is the best way to be accepted and avoid abandonment? These are not accusations. They are X-rays. Nietzsche didn't see people as good or bad. He saw them as complex creatures shaped by pain, instinct, history, and necessity. You can use this same lens. Start by watching not what people say, but how they behave under pressure. Instincts are loudest when the mask slips. When someone's status is threatened, how do they react? When they're ignored, do they shrink or lash out? When they're criticized, do they reflect or retaliate? In these moments, you're not seeing their personality, you're seeing their programming. Nietzsche believed most people were unaware of their own instincts because they lived in a kind of spiritual sleep. They were trained by culture, by religion, by education to believe in abstract ideals, good, evil, humility, duty, without ever questioning where those ideas came from or why they felt compelled to follow them. He wasn't attacking morality. He was asking, who benefits when you believe this? Who gains power when you obey that rule? What deeper need in you is being fulfilled by this belief? Let's take an example. Imagine someone who constantly puts others first, who sacrifices their own needs to help everyone. On the surface, that looks noble. But Nietzsche would ask, is this altruism or is it a strategy for worthiness? Is this person giving because they love others or because they fear being unloved if they say no? You see, once you start tracing behavior back to instinct, things get clearer but also more uncomfortable, because you realize how much of what we call virtue is actually camouflage. And once you see that in others, you inevitably see it in yourself. That's the real challenge of this power, using it without becoming bitter. Nietzsche didn't want us to become cold or cruel. He wanted us to become conscious, to stop being blindly manipulated by our instincts, to wake up, to take back our agency. Because when you understand the machinery behind human behavior, you stop reacting to it. You stop being shocked when people betray you. You stop being confused by contradiction. You realize they're just living out their code, and now that you can read it, you no longer have to be surprised by it. But Nietzsche also warned of a trap here. If you stare too long at the hidden drives of others without doing the same work on yourself, you become a cynic. You start to think everyone is fake, but that's not the truth. People are not fake, they are layered. They are trying, failing, surviving. And your job isn't to judge them. It's to understand them with such clarity that your interactions stop being reactive and start becoming intentional. So let me ask you something that few dare to ask themselves. What survival tactic are you still calling your personality? What part of your identity have you built around avoiding pain? And if you strip that away, what would be left? Beyond the mask, how Nietzsche's concept of the Übermensch reveals what people are really hiding. Nietzsche's idea of the Übermensch, often mistranslated as Superman, is not about strength in the comic book sense. It's not about power over others. It's about power over the self. It's about transcending the inherited values, the conditioned instincts, the borrowed morality that most people live by without question. The Übermensch is not someone who dominates others. He is someone who has faced himself so completely that he no longer needs to hide, perform, or conform. And that's precisely why Nietzsche believed most people would never become one, because to become an Übermensch, you must first confront what you're hiding. Here's the paradox. We all wear masks, and we're all terrified of being seen without them. We perform roles: dutiful child, loyal friend, generous giver, humble worker, not just because society demands it, but because we've built our sense of identity around those roles. But Nietzsche saw something deeper. He saw that behind most masks is not a monster, but a prisoner. A person who has shaped themselves not around who they are, but around who they are supposed to be. And that's where people hide their true potential, not behind evil, but behind obedience. Ask yourself, when was the last time you did something entirely because you wanted to, without guilt, without fear of judgment, without needing someone's approval? When was the last time you spoke a truth that cost you something? If those moments are rare, you're not alone. Nietzsche believed that most people live in what he called the herd morality, a system of values designed not to awaken you, but to keep you manageable. And once you start seeing how deeply these values are embedded in people, you realize how much they're hiding, especially from themselves. Here's where it gets uncomfortable. The more virtuous someone appears, the more likely it is they're hiding something vital. Not because they're fake, but because they've learned to suppress what doesn't fit the narrative. The kind person may be hiding rage they're afraid to express. The disciplined worker may be hiding a deep fatigue they won't admit. The spiritual person may be hiding ambition, lust, or pride. Nietzsche didn't believe in tearing down virtue. He believed in tearing off the mask to see what it's covering and asking if the truth underneath might be even more powerful. The Übermensch is the one who no longer wears the mask. Not because they've rejected morality, but because they've created their own. They don't need to appear kind, they are kind when they choose to be. They don't need to appear generous, they give when it aligns with their deeper truth. And when they say no, they don't apologize. They don't flinch, because they are no longer negotiating with the herd for acceptance. Their source of worth doesn't come from others, it comes from the clarity of their own becoming. This is how Nietzsche read people, by watching what they couldn't say, by noticing the parts of themselves they edited out. He would look at someone who seemed humble and ask, what power are they afraid of claiming? He would see someone acting pious and wonder, what desire did they kill to appear pure? He saw that behind every exaggerated virtue was a shadow, and that shadow was often the most real part of the person, the part that had not yet been integrated, the part that, if embraced, could make them whole. And that's the key. Nietzsche didn't want us to destroy the shadow. He wanted us to own it, to become strong enough to stop hiding from what we are. Because the moment you stop hiding is the moment you become dangerous, not in a destructive way, but in a magnetic, authentic, undeniable way. People sense it. They feel the difference between someone who's pretending and someone who's become. And ironically, the more you embrace your shadow, the more you stop performing, the more others begin to trust you. Not because you're perfect, but because you're real. So here's a question that might haunt you in the best possible way. What part of yourself would you least want the world to see? And what if that part is the key to your evolution? Because in Nietzsche's world, the Übermensch is not someone who has no flaws. He is someone who has nothing left to hide. And once you reach that level of self-possession, reading other people becomes effortless. You see their masks not with contempt, but with recognition. You've worn them too. You know what it costs to keep them on. And you know the power that's waiting when they finally fall. The final layer, how Nietzsche's eternal return forces us to see through the illusions of others and ourselves. Imagine this: you're standing at a crossroads and a voice speaks to you not from the sky, but from the deepest part of your own mind. It asks, what if you had to live this exact life over again, exactly as it is, for eternity? Every eternity. Every joy, every mistake, every lie, every moment of silence when you wanted to scream repeated forever. Would you curse that voice? Or would you fall to your knees in gratitude? That question is Nietzsche's concept of the eternal return, and it is not a myth or a theory. It is a test, a mirror, a final brutal filter for what is real and what is illusion, not just in life, but in people. The eternal return is not about the literal repetition of time. It's about our honest relationship with our choices, with our values, with who we've become. And here's where it becomes a devastating tool for seeing through people. Nietzsche believed that most people could not bear the weight of this idea, not because it's depressing, but because it reveals how little of their life is truly theirs. How much of it has been lived in fear, in conformity, in resentment, in compromise. The eternal return exposes the mask not by tearing it off, but by asking, would you willingly choose this mask forever? When Nietzsche applied this lens to humanity, he saw a kind of spiritual poverty. People weren't evil. They were exhausted. Exhausted from pretending they were someone they were not. Exhausted from chasing goals that didn't belong to them. Exhausted from holding together a self-image built on borrowed beliefs and unresolved fears. And when he asked us to imagine living that exhaustion forever, he wasn't being cruel. He was offering a way out, a way to see clearly. Because the eternal return forces you to confront whether your life is authentic or an illusion. And once you start seeing your own illusions, you begin to see everyone else's. You see how many people are trapped in cycles they don't even recognize. How many are repeating inherited patterns, living lives of quiet desperation, masked by smiles and filtered photos. You start to read people not just by what they're doing, but by what they're reliving. The woman who keeps dating the same kind of man. The man who keeps chasing the same kind of success. The friend who keeps sabotaging themselves at the edge of breakthrough. These aren't random behaviors, they're loops. And Nietzsche's eternal return reveals the loop in all of us. But here's the twist. This idea is not meant to crush you. It's meant to awaken you. It's Nietzsche's ultimate invitation to choose consciously. To live in a way that, if repeated forever, would not be a punishment but a celebration. And when you bring this mindset into your interactions with others, something profound happens. You stop playing small games. You stop needing people to like you. You stop trying to impress, because you're no longer living for the moment, you're living for eternity. And that changes everything. With this perspective, you also become incredibly effective at reading people. You see whether they're living in alignment or in avoidance, whether they're driven by vision or by fear, whether they're building something timeless or just surviving another loop. And you don't need to interrogate them. You can see it in their energy, in their eyes, in the way they either light up with purpose or flicker with anxiety. And maybe the most powerful shift of all, you stop needing to fix people. You stop trying to wake them up. You realize that your clarity is enough. Your example is enough. Because those who are ready to break their loop will recognize you. Not as someone better than them, but as someone who broke free. Someone who faced the eternal return and said yes. And that yes is the most honest signal a human being can give. So I leave you with one final question, one that Nietzsche might whisper into your own silent, sacred space. If you had to live this moment again 1,000 times, would you still be proud to have chosen it? Because in the end, the hidden power Nietzsche used to read people instantly wasn't magic. It was clarity. It was honesty. And it was the courage to look deeply and without flinching, not just at others, but within. And once you've done that, you'll never see the world the same way again.